Welcome to Adventures in Gaming, and today we're going to discuss NASCAR Heat Evolution. What I've done is I've grabbed some screen captures from DeejayKnight's Twitch feed that was taken on July 1 at the Coke Zero 400 qualifying at Daytona. I'm going to leave a link below to that video so you can watch it. It's about 50 plus minutes long. But like I said, I picked out some screenshots, and we're going to take a look at that and see what we can determine from those screenshots and what the gameplay might or might not be like. So the main thrust of this video is going to be looking at the user interface instead of gameplay. We're just going to analyze the menus and the options and stuff like that just to see what we can determine what this game is going to be like, because as we know, gameplay is one thing, but having the options to be able to make your game play correctly and the way you want is completely another. So in your main screen here, we have a race option, which is just a quick race. It's their way of getting you into racing and NASCAR racing as quick as possible. There is no setup changes allowed. You just go in, you pick your track and your driver, and you start a race. Next up is challenges, and we'll discuss that later, but it's a series of events where it will actually challenge you to do a specific thing that a driver has already accomplished, a real NASCAR driver has already accomplished, and see if you can beat it. Championship is self-explanatory, and it is where you're just going to run either a full season by itself or a chase for the Sprint Cup, and then you get to pick your driver there. Career is new and expanded. With this one, you get to actually create your driver and start a multi-season career. Now, I don't know how many seasons it will actually span, but you actually start with an unsponsored car and you move forward from there. Multiplayer is pretty obvious, and you'll be able to go online on Xbox Live or PS4 and play online with your friends. And then options we're going to go through next. So if in the main menu you select options, it'll get you to the options menu, which has game settings, controls, sound, and profile icon. Your game settings, if you select that, then it takes you to this area here where you can control your damage and your session settings. As you can see, we've got full damage, and then under race modes or championship modes, you can set up whether you want to practice, qualify, race, or whatever. Now, if you notice at the bottom, there's a button, at least on this PlayStation 4 version that they were playing, the square button is for advanced settings. If you go into advanced settings, you got a option of choosing your driving physics, which is normal or simulation, and then your transmission, I would imagine, would be automatic or manual. So if we back out to the main menu, and then we hit options, and then controls, what we get is this screen that shows your input device and the settings for that input device. One thing that I noticed right away from this is that it doesn't appear to have any remapping capability. So if you want your car toggle status to be the B button or the triangle instead of the circle, then it doesn't appear that you actually have a way to do that. The other thing on the right that is looking very promising is you've got a test sensitivity where you can turn your steering wheel and your brake and your throttle, and then you can adjust each one of those. I don't see any options for force feedback, but this seems to be an area here where we're going to be doing a lot of fine-tuning to get the feel of the car right. So now we head into our first race, and they're sitting here at Atlanta, and when you get the green flag, you get your, not really speedometer, but tachometer on the right there that actually shows you what your RPMs are, and then you've got a mile per hour indicator down below that. It also gives you your position in the upper right, and in the middle of the right-hand side of the screen there, it kind of shows you that's where all your updates come across. And if you look at this next frame here, it shows your race lap times each time you cross the start-finish line. Tells you the laps to go and what your last lap was and your best lap. Now, when you finish the race, you get this little screen here, and it tells you what you finished, and you get this speed rating. And we're going to talk about that speed rating in a minute. Here's an example of the results screen. It shows 10 places at a time, so you can kind of see where you finished there and everybody else. Now, when you get done with the race, it pops up with this screen here, and there's a number of things on here that we need to talk about. And we'll start in the upper right at the very top. You notice that you are level 1, so you have to progress and level up in this game to do different things. It's got your username and your car number, and then the SP is the speed points that you acquire every time you race. That speed rating that you get at the end of the race, which this one was 85 when they raced there, it takes that 85 and it multiplies it by the number of laps that you drove. So this being their first race, they had a 85 speed rating and raced 6 laps, and so that adds up to 510. So once you get those speed points up to a certain level, then you will level up to level 2. Now, down below that, you have your track info, and it tells you the number of races that you've raced, and it also tells you that the speed rating that you have required to be able to level up at this track. And I believe what that does is it actually makes the AI harder to drive against. The AI in this game starts out pretty easy, and you can pass them pretty easy, but then as you race and level up with your speed rating, it determines a difficulty level for each track for you. So that's something that could be pretty exciting for this game. Here's another quick race at Daytona, and you can see the start at the green flag here. And as we go through the race, you can see your laps to go, lap time on the right side like we discussed earlier. And then at the end, you can see there where they finished 21st, and they had a speed rating of 85. And so, like we talked about earlier, you take that speed rating of 85, you multiply it by the 4 laps, and they got 340 speed points. So you take that and add it in with the 510 that they already had from the first race, and you see now they have 850 speed points. So that's the race mode of the game. The next one that we're going to talk about is challenges. And so you go back to the main menu and you select challenges. And you see here that the first one that you get the opportunity to run is the Brad Keselowski challenge, where he's at Auto Club Speedway. There's 5 laps to go and they want you to finish first. Well, DeejayKnight, who was playing this game, wasn't a very good racer, so he finished 4th with a challenge rating of 88. But it shows also there that he had 0 of 1 completed. So I don't know how many challenges are in this game, but this might be one of those opportunities for DLC where they add challenges throughout the year based on what has happened, like in past NASCAR games. So now it's on to career mode. So you go back to the main menu and select career, and then you can see here, do you want to start a new career? And we say yes. And from there, you start off by creating your driver. You get to select what make of car you want. You get to select your number. And then there's a number of other options there, as you can see, that you can create your character with. Change the hair, eyebrows, nose, all kinds of stuff. So once you get that to your liking, which I highly doubt that you're going to be able to really make your driver look like you, but I'm sure lots of people will try, you get introduced to your team manager. And he basically just gives you some information about what we're going to have to do. And he says you need to finish in the top 30 twice to get enough attention to acquire a sponsor. So what happened there was he did not finish in the top 30. So he goes on to race at Daytona unsponsored. If you notice that the team and the sponsor are grayed out, that means that he didn't acquire enough attention to get a sponsor. So just like real NASCAR, he's actually going to go into Daytona with no sponsor. Okay, so in this sponsor attraction race that he's got here, it's at Kansas, and if you notice, you start out with a practice session. When we go into our options screen, if you remember that from earlier, you'll notice that career mode we had set to practice, qualify, and race. So back to Kansas here, we have our practice session, and during that, now during career, you, instead of like during the quick race mode, you don't have an option to change your setup, but in career you have an option to change your setup. So you can see that left button, right button will flip back and forth between custom setup, career, and default setup. When you go to custom setup, you see that a button at the bottom of the screen, the square button, actually goes to your garage, and in your garage is where you can create your setup. I don't have any screenshots of that, so unfortunately, hopefully that information will be coming out later so you can see really what kind of stuff you can change. Now in quick race mode, I know that when you go into the pits, you can actually change stuff that normal pit crew can change: track bar, wedge, tire pressure, stuff like that. But when you're setting up for a race in career mode, you actually get to go into the garage and change all your stuff, your cambers, and just like a normal setup would be. So as you notice here, we're in practice time. It gives you an hour of practice time. I would imagine you could skip out of that as soon as you feel you're ready to qualify. At the end, it shows you your lap times there. Now that's from best to worst, and obviously he ran 2 laps here, and so they're differing times quite a bit. Something I'd like to see here is the actual lap number that you actually created, that best lap time. That would hopefully help you determine some changes on your car or something like that to help you have a better race. So once you get done with practice, then you go on to qualifying, and once again you can do your custom setup again, but you can see here it tells you at the end of qualifying your specific time and your qualifying results. From there, we're on to our first race. So you can see we're at Daytona. He didn't qualify to get a sponsor, so he goes to Daytona and races. And I did not see anywhere in here where you set up your length of race or anything like that for your career mode. So that's something that we're going to have to pay attention to later. He finished 23rd with a speed rating of 85. It also tells you when you finish the event who had the fastest lap of the race. And when you get to the end, you'll see that you basically get this standard track screen again, and it shows you your speed rating and stuff like that. And note at the bottom there where it says races, it says 2. Now when this guy raced, he raced 1 career mode race at Daytona and 1 quick race at Daytona, and it says races 2, so it doesn't keep track of those separately based on the mode that you do. So I think that's probably in the end a good thing, because what that does is it adjusts your speed rating all for every type of race that you do. So if you do a lot of races at in career mode, and then all of a sudden you want to do a quick race mode because you haven't got time, it takes into account the difficulty for the AI based on your speed rating that you've accumulated in your career mode. So I think that's a good thing. Now, obviously, they don't have multiplayer running because this game is not live and released yet, so we're going to finish off here with some odds and ends. First off, we'll just show you some tracks here, and notice that we've got different speed ratings for different tracks, and that also we have tracks that are unavailable. If you notice this track level 2 required, you've got to earn 7,500 speed points, and that is in the upper right hand corner there, and you basically get your speed points by racing at the tracks. Here's an example of some load screens. They have a NASCAR Heat Evolution splash screen, and then they have these fast fact screens that you can read while it's loading up races. Just a little tidbit for you there. Next up is car camera views, and we've been shown 4 of them so far. The first one here is bumper cam. The second one is your hood cam, which was shown the other day on their Twitter feed. The third one is a in-car view, and the fourth one is a chase view. There might be more views, I don't know, but we'll see when the game gets released. Now we're going to talk about a user interface thing that's really going to help us out during the race, and that is, if you see in the control settings here, the circle button is the toggle car status. And if you look in the when you hit that button during the race, you can see that we have a car status at the top, and you've got estimated fuel, you got your radiator. Now that is given in a percentage. I would rather see that in a temperature rating, but you've got your oil temperature also. Then we've got tire status. As you can see here, I took several shots running throughout a race here, and you can see the tire status and how the percentages and the temperature changes. You've got percentage of tire life left, I would guess, and then you have your temperature for each tire for left, center, and right side of the tire. Now, the only problem with this is I know when I'm in a tight race, I don't have time to be looking at my tire status and staring at that instead of during the race. So I hope there is some sort of way that when you're running practice sessions that you can go in and look at your tire status and see while you're in the garage, like you used to with old EA games, while you're in the garage, and see what your temperature and wear ratings were for that moment as you paused. So maybe you can pause the game and see what kind of wear ratings you have, so you can determine how you're going to make your adjustments to your car to best conserve your tires. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Adventures in Gaming, and I hope you found this information helpful to you. I think what it will do is allow you to see some of the background information that we really deal with when we play a game rather than gameplay. Lots of people complain about, oh, this looks this certain way, or the tracks don't look exactly right. But when it comes down to it, it's the UI and the settings that we really need to dig into to make sure that we got what we need to play the game correctly. So once again, I hope you enjoyed it. Keep on gaming, and go Tigers.